Alright, so I figure I make a video on 20XX. It's probably one of the biggest terms, one of the biggest inside jokes of Melee in 2015. You can see memes, and whenever you see two foxes pick Final Destination, you'll probably see the Twitch chat spam 20XX. We saw this kind of joke run its course with a lot of people photoshopping GameCube boxes with just foxes on the screen. You see hacks make a joke out of it, and we saw the epitome of it last year in Apex 2014 when Mango and Lucky played hacks and King, and they all played Fox. And so the notion is that in the future, in some distant, not too distant future, when the play is really optimized, that your win is going to be based on port priority, and basically you're going to have to win the rock paper scissors and play Fox and then win based on priority. And a lot of people, especially when you look on like Reddit Smash Bros, or you look at outsiders who comment on Kotaku, oh gosh, like Kotaku's the worst, or like a YouTube video, the notion is like, oh wow, like Fox is a super lame-o, I guess this game only revolves around mindless tech skill and playing Fox, and that no other playstyle really thrives. Like you don't have to think, it's all dumb tech skill. You look at Smash 4, they have a lot more mind games, and you can really show off other aspects of the game aside from just spamming tech skill. And granted, Reddit Smash Bros is probably the lowest common denominator at times. Once in a while you get good discussion, so I'm not ragging on it too hard because I am a mod there, and there's a lot of great work in the community that comes through Reddit Smash Bros, but I feel that a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions with how the meta works in terms of what's considered viable at top level play. We see a worry every time we see a top player say, oh, I'm going to switch to Fox. We saw a lot of worry when Armada was switching from Peach to Fox. Zoo's kind of playing with the idea of playing Fox for some of his matchups. And whenever we see a top player lose to Fox, people suggest, well, why don't you play Fox as well? But the meta is really interesting because if you really look at the development of Melee and what was really considered the top in each era, it actually kind of cycles back and forth. In the early days, we all thought that Sheik was really strong. Fox, just to give a little clarification, we always thought that Fox was a strong character right from the beginning of when Melee started becoming competitive and when we started having tournaments. So, but in the early days, a lot more characters such as like Sheik, Marth, and Floaties actually did really well. Fox, still performed well, but the Sheiks and the Marths were generally more successful at the top of at the top results. And then we move forward, we see, Ken and Azen, they use Marth pretty well. Azen uses Sheik a lot. There's a lot of good Sheik mains that are starting to come up in NorCal and just across the U.S. We saw Captain Jack. And Fox and Falco would always play a role, but they weren't really dominating as much as people thought for a while. And then we saw players like King begin to really develop their Foxes in the MLG era. So King and Korean DJ were really bringing in a new era of technical play. PC Chris was bringing in technical Falco as well. And Ansa, Ken, and all these old school players started falling off. Then Fox and Falco started becoming a thing in 06 and 07. But then we saw the punish game of Floaties on Fox and Falco in 07 to like 2010 really dominate Fox and Falco to the point where, although Fox and Falco is still strong, we saw players like Sheik, or characters like Sheik, Puff, Marth just doing really well at just gimping and punishing Fox and Falco. And so we see this back and forth tug of war. And, Fox is developing a lot of great technology with multi-shines, invincible ledge dashes. And overall, if I was on the balance team, I would say, hey, like, we should probably add a frame of lag or some sort of, like, vulnerability to some of Fox's moves. But needless to say, what I'm getting at is, Fox and Falco are strong, but, like, it's a cyclical thing, in my opinion. When we talk about Melee, Fox and Falco developed new technology, and now it's up to the floaty players and the mid-floaty players to just really develop their own technology to counter what Fox and Falco come up with. And overall, the technology for floaties is just to get better and more, precise with their movement, with their punish game, and just really develop the touch of death. And so we look at the character results and of a lot of these majors, and it's actually pretty healthy. When we look at Apex 2015, there were only, I would say, about two Fox mains in total in the top 8. Half of Armada, half of Mango, and a full Leffen account for Fox mains. But also in the top 8, we saw Sheik, Yoshi, Falco, Puff, Marth, and Peach. All these characters had a reasonable level of success against Foxes in the tournament. Also doing a marvelous job beating players like SFAT and Lucky. We saw Marth do a lot of work in eliminating Foxes. And so the metagame is not that bad. At the Big House 4 in October, November, we saw 6 characters in the top 8, although Fox was a little bit more popular with Kells, Mango, Leffen, Hax, and Lucky. But a lot of other characters were really were used as well. We saw it was mostly top tier tournament, so Falcon, Marth, Sheik, Peach, and then Falco and Fox. And so it's a very healthy metagame. I really wish through communicating this that at the end of the day, there are a lot of characters that are good in Melee that can still survive, and we see results really present that that a lot of characters can top 8 at a national. Maybe there are certain matchups and certain players that just know the Fox matchup so well that people like Armada really struggle with a particular type of Fox like Leffen. But I'm not gonna buy Armada's notion that it's too hard, because really the only Fox that beats Armada is Leffen, and that's because of just Leffen's familiarity with Peach. So I have to give him a little more credit. I have to give Leffen more credit on his ability to study the character and make optimal plays, as opposed to the lack of I guess peak potential by Peach. And it's actually interesting because a lot of people compare Melee with other games. We look at Smash 4, Project M, Street Fighter 4, and a lot of people make fun of Melee because oh wow, the metagame is so centralized. Whereas look at Smash 4, look at how many characters that are in the top 32. And frankly, I don't know if it's an apples to apples comparison. And so inevitably, when you have a new game, a bunch of characters will probably do well. But as the game evolves, no matter what game it is, you're going to see a centralization of strategies and characters, and people will begin to realize, well, character Z is really bad, has these really unfavorable matchups, and then character A is just a lot better, and that's just inevitable. There's no such thing as perfect game balance in any game you have. If the game is dynamically interesting and each character has their own unique kits, then game balance is virtually impossible, and people will begin to discover these differences in which characters are just generally better. And it's delusional actually to say that all characters are good, all characters are the best, because realistically that's not true. And we look at other games, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter Third Strike, and we all saw them centralized eventually, with mostly Chun-Li, Ken, and Yun being the characters used in Street Fighter. But centralization isn't necessarily a bad thing, as long as I feel that there's enough characters to make it interesting. Granted, Fox vs. Fox would probably be boring if that was all of top 8. But Fox isn't the only character, and that's the notion that I hope to bring, and I really hope that people begin to understand that. The last point I'd like to bring about this is that the Fox players that play Melee are generally just good players, and I think it's a little bit of a disservice to discredit players like Silent Wolf, like Hax, Mango, Lucky, SFAT, all these players that are like top 20, top 25 in Melee. They're all naturally good players, and whether they play Fox or play someone else, they're still going to perform well. They would all easily crush me with their secondaries, and their skill is really high. It just so happens that they think that Fox is the best character, but if we were to eliminate Fox in the game, they would still do really well. So it's not just because they pick Fox that it's like a magic formula that they're really good just because they play Fox. It's not that broken, and I just really hope that for everyone else that doesn't main Fox, but they main a character that's viable, or maybe even a low tier, that they learn the game to develop their fundamentals, they push their punish game a lot further, and really develop the meta. So I know there's a lot of groups doing that. I see that with 20GX at the Falcon mains. Sheik mains are still, developing their own things as well, and I see a lot of little subgroups developing to really just say, let's push our character to the limit and show that Fox is not the only character that can dominate. And so, hopefully, we continue to have a diversified meta. Every Evo seems to have a lot of characters represented. Every Apex has a lot of characters represented, and so I really like where our meta is in terms of character diversity.